all, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to one more session of Authors Afternoon, an initiative by Prabha Khaitan Foundation in collaboration with Taj Bengal and Sri Cement. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Sunita Kohli for this session. Sunita Kohli is an interior designer, a reputed leader in historical interior architectural restoration, and since 1972 a manufacturer of fine contemporary and classical furniture. She is the first interior designer to be conferred the Padma Shri in 1992. To be in conversation with her, we have Nita Khanna. She is a business person with an academic background in English literature, aesthetics and critical theory from Bombay University and the University of Oxford. She has worked in advertising and film production in Mumbai, Dubai and Toronto. As an Indo-Canadian, she lives between Toronto and New Delhi. Welcome, and please take the session forward.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction to both of us. And I would like to thank the Prabha Khaitan Foundation.
Whilst revealing on Sunita's life and career and works today, we will be focusing the discussion on her best-selling cookbook, the Lucknow Cookbook, which she has co-authored with her non-engineering mother, Chansur. So Sunita, let me begin by asking you about the serendipitous nature of your professional journey. You have been, for close to half a century, you have been a celebrated designer, a professional architectural restorer. You were an expert on Sir Edwin Lutyens and New Delhi, and his Delhi. You have won the only Padma Shri in design in 1992. You have been awarded the Mahila Shiromani by Mother Teresa, right here. And now you're a best-selling author of a cookbook. So share with us, how did this whole thing begin?
I think that I've led a very much an unplanned, my profession has been unplanned, as also this book, because I read literature for my BA, for my master's, and then went into a PhD on Christopher Marlowe, which I did not complete. Now Christopher Marlowe is a far cry from what one is doing now, but that is how journeys are. And I think I became a designer because the way I grew up in Lucknow, my parents were very interested. They came out, they were very interested, particularly my father, in looking at old lamps and furniture, and there used to be this talukdari belt between Lucknow and Calcutta. So much could be found in those days, which was genuine 19th century stuff. So we would go to these, we used to call them kabadiwalas now. Today every kabadiwala is called an antique shop, but us zamane mein kabadiwale hi hote the. So, and it began by going to these sales and some auctions then, and I think it is my youth that prepared me for what later became my profession. And my profession started off by me learning how to be a professional furniture restorer from a master restorer in Lucknow, and studying the history of English furniture because it closely follows the same nomenclature of different periods of English literature. So that happened, and then one was given one's first small assignment, one's first hotel to do, which was I started in 1971, and my first hotel was for the Oberois in Khajuraho, where there were no other hotels at that time. And in my profession, you're only as good as your last project. So one thing leads to another, and now it's 48 years since I've been on it. So it's been a serendipitous journey, and that's how it happened.
So I'm going to ask you the next question, which is the raison d'etre of the book for yourself. You've explained some of it. But that note that you did, and the 10,000 words, introduction is very special, and I'm going to ask her to read a little bit from there to better understand the reason for the book, and also to walk us through her parents and her own life in Lucknow, her Lucknow story.
Well, the introduction the introduction is called Vatan Lost and Vatan Found, from Lahore to Lucknow, my parents' story. But prefacing that, what David wanted me to write was a note about the book. And so this is what I did. So I'll read some passages from it. And my parents came, I was born in Lahore, just to set the record all straight. My mother is from Balochistan. She's from Quetta. My father is Rajput, but for 4 generations they've been naturalized Lahoris. So my family has come from that part of undivided India. So here's the thing. I said Lucknow has always been a city of refinements, and its cuisine reflects these sensibilities. In many ways, Lucknow was considered the cultural capital of North India. It was here that the Urdu language was developed to near perfection. Art and architecture, particularly Indo-scenic architecture, flourished in this city built along the banks of the river Gomti. Architectural heritage is history written in stone. This is true of the many fine buildings that still exist in the city. Most importantly, Lucknow was and still is a city known for its composite culture, its Ganga-Yamuna tehzeeb. And the quintessence of this culture was and is an amalgamation of the finest of Hindu and Muslim thoughts and their mutual acceptance. This composite culture of plurality and complexity was also reflected in the easy acceptance of the varied cuisines of the various communities that resided in Lucknow. My father had arrived in Lucknow in 1947, shortly after the partition of India, to make a home in this city. 70 years later, we still call Lucknow our home, our hometown. And then I go on to say that Lucknow has always had an accepting society. My parents were warmly welcomed by several old residents when they first moved here. The city's rich and varied cuisine is partly due to this easy acceptance of people and their cultures from other parts of India and of those who arrived from beyond its borders, like did my family. This is a book for cooks and for armchair cooks, because for people who really love food, it is a lens through which to view this particular world. So that was a note that I wrote before the introduction to my parents' story.
Thank you, Sunita. I'm going to ask you now about your own Lucknow story, because you're not rooted in the way of several generations. Your journey has been one of your parents has been one of migration and displacement, and that's what is showcased in Vatan Lost and Vatan Found. So we would like to know a little more about your Lucknow story. How did it inspire you in your profession? We've talked a little bit about that, but the syncretic culture that you came to, you were born in Lahore and then raised in Lucknow, 2 beautiful cities. A little bit about that.
I think the most important thing is that, I mean, my family, we are Hindus. Muslim is the predominant religion and the cultural mahal of Lucknow. And I studied in a Roman Catholic convent. So I think till the age of about 12 or 13, all our various friends in school friends, one knew them by their first names, and it was only when we realized, you know, at that age that what their last names meant, which religion they belonged to, did it sink in that we actually belong to different religions. But in Lucknow, you know, everybody celebrates every festival and celebrates it with a lot of josh. Like, you know, for Eid, I mean, whether it's savai or biryani, it goes from delicacies from our Muslim friends come to us, and we do similar things for Holi and for Diwali. So all that happened, and this this deeply syncretic value system that still exists in Lucknow today is, I think, what has fashioned one's value systems as being a totally secular Indian who believes in who believes in the plurality of our country. And I think this is what resonated. Otherwise, I don't see, मैंने तो चलते चलते किताब लिखती, why it should suddenly become larger than life and be reviewed by NDTV and be reviewed by so much print media. I just set out to write an introduction to my parents' story. But I think this has resonated.
May I request you to read the last 3 sentences from Watan Lost and Found, with which I personally felt personal resonance, found them really moving, and I think our audience would too.
So the last 3 sentences from Watan Lost and Watan Found are, I wrote, my mother is now in her 90s. I too am in the autumn of my life. To quote Atya Hussain, and the quote begins, the strength of my roots is strong. It also causes pain because it makes one a stranger everywhere in the deeper area of one's mind and spirit, except where one was born and brought up. And for me, that is Lahore, where I was born, and Lucknow, where I have been brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. And I would like to open the floor for questions. We finished 5 minutes before time, but that gives you all more interaction time with Sunita Kohli.
We so wanted not to be 1 minute over. We were given a time. So now you have more time for questions, if anybody has questions.
Good evening, ma'am. It was wonderful hearing you. And what I was struck by was that we only knew you as an interior decorator so far, or an author of a cookbook. But what really struck me today was your love for history, and that you are a person with a lot of knowledge about history, and you take pride in all the wonderful heritage that we have had. So what do you feel about this modern day India, where secularism is taking a lot of beating? Where do you see Lucknow? Where do you see our country right now at this moment?
I think our secularity is so deeply entrenched amongst all of us that is not going to go anywhere. These are momentary aberrations, and I'm sure this too shall pass. That's all I can say.
Good afternoon. If you don't mind my saying so, I like the sound of your mother's cookbook. You said it was simple. I could cope with that. In your book, from what little I know of Lucknowi food, it's rich, it's ornate, it's aromatic. Am I going to have to struggle through 20 spices, pounding, pasting, etc. before I get to it?
You mean in this book?
Yes.
No, this book.
As opposed to your mother's 345 recipes.
No, they've all been inculcated and absorbed into this. This is not my cookbook. This, as you read my mother, Chand Sur comes first, and then I come, Sunita Kohli. We have co-authored it with her. And the thing is, I rewrote her recipes because in the midst of this deadline delivery of this manuscript, which I wrote in longhand, I mean, my children said, which age do you belong to? And I always tell them that, look, till 40 years ago, people used to give their manuscripts written by hand because I'm technologically challenged. Everything is so simply written that when you go through it, and I'll give you an example. There's a chicken dish here called dahi chicken, and it's a house speciality. When it's served, it seems so exotic that nobody can know. But how is this how is this this very dense curry which is sticking to the chicken, and how does it come about? It's the simplest recipe you can think of. There's another recipe called jalebi pudding, and a jalebi pudding is a household kind of favorite. And how did that come about? I think that came about because my mother was a refugee, and there is a refugee syndrome. Before I come to the jalebi pudding and why it came out, once my parents' second home is up in Mussoorie. So, I mean, the house is late 19th century and it's shabby and genteel, and my mother's a very good bridge player and lots of high teas and all that happens. And then she uses tea cozies. I mean, I don't use tea cozies in my house, but she uses tea cozies. So I asked, I was having tea, she was having tea, I was having coffee in the morning sitting in her veranda. And I said, where did you get that tea cozy from, Mama? So she said, she looked a little uncomfortable and she said, oh, I don't remember and all that. I said, you know what? That suspiciously looks like a kurta I had when I was 15. Because of that partition syndrome, everything had to be recycled. The jalebi pudding is also an example of that. You know, garam jalebi mangwaye chai ke liye. Ab sab to koi nahi kha sakta. Kuch na kuch to bachte hi hain. So that leftover jalebi the next day would then be soaked in milk and whipped eggs and all that and eventually baked. It is a 3-step recipe. It is so delicious that, you know, there are like there's dudhya taroi. I mean, you know, in Lucknow, because it had a lot of cows all around, not roaming the streets, but actually there were, you know, but it was very rich. It was also part of the Indo-Gangetic plain. So it's always been very rich in milk and milk products, and therefore we have this delicate, the most delicate dessert I think in the world, which is called nimish, which in Delhi they call daulat ki chaat, but that's different actually, because there they add khoya and all that, and it's not as light and frothy as thing. So like we make vegetables, like we have dudhya taroi and dudhya lauki and all that, which are really delicious, and again 3-step cooking. It's all in the book.
So this doodh ka, I mean this doodhi thing, is it a dessert or is it a doodhi? Doodhi is doodhi, I know, but when you make it with the doodh, is that a
No. It's a vegetable.
Okay.
It's a vegetable.
Yeah. Okay.
But a lot of, I mean, we in Lucknow we don't have the Punjabi paneer. You know, paneer, matar paneer and all that. We don't have that.
That's a really good recipe, the chana. And,
Yeah, but we do like khurchan ki paneer, which is done on the fire itself with kala chana. I mean, there's a lot of emphasis on kala chana.
I find so much sharing with you right now. जैसे कहते हैं ना, माँ की याद दिला दी. आप जब जिस तरह से अपनी recipes और mom की बातें कर रही हैं, I think most of us are remembering mom, so am I, and how they still check us about our cooking, and how they still feel the daughters are not good enough. And I can say personally, when my mom enters my house, I feel it's worse than my mother-in-law, because she's constantly, you know, checking. So I was just wondering if you could share some fun anecdotes when you must have been trying your mom's recipes in her kitchen or your kitchen, or what kind of legacy as a cook you would like for your children to follow.
You know, I have to say that there's my mother, there's my husband and me, our generation, our 3 children, and our grandchildren. They all cook. They all think they're great cooks. And let me tell you, they also think they're all great designers. So, you know, so it's 4 generations. So my husband is perpetually trying to improve my cooking. You know, I mean, do this, do that. And also he'll do, I should share a story with you, is that one summer, normally the children would go up when they were young. Now, of course, they go to very many different places. They would go up to the hills to my parents' home in Mussoorie. A lot of children used to go up to their grandparents. But that year they decided not to go because they were all swimming nationally. So they wanted to be trained and things like this. So my husband started making, every day he was doing different types of kulfi, the kulfi recipes here. Achha, so I asked him, I said, you know, sometimes it was badam ki kulfi and piste ki kulfi, and so I asked him, I said, Rome, his name is Rome. So I said, Rome, aap ye kaise bana rahe? He said, why should I tell you? I said, are you crazy and your wife can't tell me? What is the secret to keep? Then I found that my PA, I was admonishing him, why have you not finished this letter, or these letters? He said, मैं क्या करूं, साहब ने मुझे बादाम की बर्फी के लिए भेज दिया था. So the secret was out, you know, how it was being changed. So the basic kulfi recipe is in this book, but you know, he had these shortcut ways. So everybody is kind of doing things, and we have a grandson who, I must say, who's in his final year in the Doon school, but he is like a professional baker. I mean, he's that fun. He's very much into sports and is a voracious reader, but he makes wonderful cupcakes and cakes.
Yeah.
That is my mother's influence on her great grandson. That is how recipes come down.
Now, among all the designs and beautiful houses and hotels you created, which is you think is your favorite one, which you really put all the ethics and all the techniques and expertise into that? And secondly, is there any other design or any other architect which you have seen and you have thought that, okay, wish you would have designed that, so you would have put much better thing in that monument or house or hotel, whatever it is? Thank you.
Okay, so we come to design. What's the first question?
Which is your favorite one which you have?
Okay, now that's like asking that you have 3 children and who's your favorite child?
But I mean,
you know,
there is a favoritism.
you know, all I'll say is that I have been in this long journey. In 2 years, it will be 50 years, and I'm still actively working. I've had the privilege and the good fortune to work on very many, very different projects. And say like the Parliament building, which if anybody who's been to Bhutan, across, if you go to Tashi Chozong, you look across the river, there's a slightly miniaturized zong, that is me. That required a whole different way of traveling, a whole different way of researching, because of that particular form of Buddhism. So I'm very culture specific particularly when there are public buildings. Today, of course, the studio of which I'm Naam Ke Vaste president, and my daughter is the CEO. She's doing some work in Calcutta. Her name is Kohli. She is the creative director and the thing. She does a lot of homes across the country. But she's a very contemporary architect and trained interior designer from Pratt Institute in New York, and who's also studied in Italy. But she's very rooted in this. They're very contemporary, but there's a rootedness that comes. And I think that is somewhat the way one traveled with them. Because, so when you say favorite, there are buildings, there are hotels that I've done in Egypt. I can't compare it to anything else, you know, like the Mina House. I've done 3 hotel boats on the Nile, of which one of them, the Philae Cruiser, won the best design award amongst 200 hotel boats. अब यहाँ वहाँ का किसी को नहीं मालूम था, और वहाँ they couldn't care less that I had restored Rashtrapati Bhavan. They didn't even know what it was, you know. Or यहाँ they would only go on with Rashtrapati Bhavan. We've done lots of other things. So I don't think if you ask me what was the most difficult project to research, it had to be for the project in Bhutan.
Okay.
Because I'm talking about, I worked with K4 then in 1987, 88, 89. Nobody was allowed into Bhutan, 2,500 foreigners and Indians maybe 5,000. But so and there were no books. There was only that one book by G.N. Mishra, and that also I had to get it from a former Indian ambassador to Bhutan, Salman Haider. I had to get a one set photocopied. अब तो बतेरी किताबें हैं भूटान के ऊपर, but उस ज़माने में तो थी नहीं. Then in 2010, we got invited back. Now, of course, it was K5 to get it all ready for the 2010 SARC. So you see both of us working and me only working, but we work well together. So I would say that was the most difficult project because of its research. You asked a second question.
So I just asked, is there any monument or any structure which you have seen which you thought which is designed by somebody else, architect, and you thought if you would have done that job, or it was a different essence to it?
I have to divide it in two. One is that do I admire buildings in India? I'm afraid the great number of buildings that I admire in India happen to belong to antiquity. Like in November, one was in Mandu, maybe for the third or fourth time. Can anybody even, I mean, Mandu, it's 500 years old, but it's sheer poetry, the architecture, with all its harvesting pools, its fountains, its water storage systems and things, and the Jahaz Mahal. And, I mean, it's so beautiful. So there, I like, much as I have traveled all over, I've been fortunate, and I'm also a very curious traveler, but I love traveling in my own country the most. And now I like traveling in, like last April, I went to 3 countries I'd never been to before, like Armenia and Georgia and Azerbaijan. And I thought, ab kafi ho gaya bhai, Europe ja ke. You know, we started going at age 12, 13 with my parents. But what these countries reveal, and everything becomes a learning experience. So, so I admire those, and amongst contemporary architects, I admire the works of Renzo Piano. I like a lot of what Norman Foster has done. So I admire, of that generation, I've got for her Legoretto, who's a Mexican, who's absolutely brilliant use of color, which so approximates what we, our sense of color.
Yeah, so it's actually over the years it developed into almost an art form, the cuisine, and we had that in Bhopal. We talked a lot about it. She had the slides on at the Bhopal Lit Fest. So they used to have 3 different people. There was a masalchi, a rakabdar, and a bawarchi. They did 3 different things, and all.
Thank you so much. How nice is this? Lovely. It shall sit on my desk. Thank you.
Yeah, just come as well. Thank you very much.
Now you can pick up one book and she's most happy to sign it.
Her handwriting is so beautiful. And I said you must leave all this handwritten stuff as a legacy to your children. She writes all her essays, her lectures here, and you're going to see it when she signs it.